Hello, everyone, and welcome to this workshop on culturally sustaining pedagogy, an asynchronous workshop. My name is Brittany Johnson. I'm a school counselor within the RCSD, the Rochester City School District. Today, we're going to be taking time to really prioritize this crucial work. This workshop is self-paced, so at your own pace. We do have some deadlines that need to go through. Um, Please commit to this time to be focused and to be very culturally aware, being present in today's activities, and to fully engage with the content and the activities that are going to be moving forward. The goal is not compliance, but a meaningful shift in practice, moving forward together and creating a meaningful experience together. So, the biggest barrier to equity is the defective mindset, the harmful practice of viewing students' differences, like their cultural backgrounds, their home language, their community knowledge, as quote unquote problems to be fixed. Our goal is to shift from a defective to an asset mindset where differences are seen as strengths to be leveraged, and we must stop seeing the students lack and start building on what they bring to the table, bring in the classroom. I love this quote that we must stop seeing what students lack and start building on what they bring. Every student comes into school with a different mindset, has different paths that has helped shape them. And how can we create this environment where they can come together and bring that together with everyone? So, our diversity is our biggest strength. Working in the Rochester City School District, we're huge on diversity, we're huge on culture, we're huge on community building. We serve nearly 90% of students of color and a significant number of multilingual learners and bilingual learners. We have the largest ENL in our community in New York State. And how do we build that into becoming better, into really shifting and changing our mindset to being with our kids and meeting them where they're at and having curriculum that they can really relate to. There are some challenges to this, but our biggest point before we move forward, our biggest point is our diversity is our greatest strength. We see diversity and take it head on with everything that we do within our school day and within our personal lives moving forward. Our biggest challenge is, despite the strength, persistent opportunity gaps exist for our Black, Latino, and multilingual learners. And a fundamental shift in mindset and instructional design is urgently needed to make all students successful in their reality, successful in their future, successful in their own education. Every student is responsible for their own learning, and we are responsible for building better leaders and building a community full of love and passion. So we have to shift our mindsets into what we're thinking. So I want you to take that into your brain, and I want you to really think about our students and the students that you serve on a daily basis, and how do what they go through, how is their culture going to be included in your curriculum. So there are some narratives of how dangerous concrete impacts can mean, like unconscious low expectations. So you're watering down the curriculum to help fit your students, right? We have this curriculum that needs to be taught, and we need to teach things as they come about. But you can see over time that the watering down in curriculum can really hinder a child's education, really can hinder how we teach the passion that we're teaching it in, because we're not giving them what they deserve, right? The second impact is student disconnection, alienation, absenteeism. Um, Students feel alienated, resulting into not coming into school, being disengaged if they are in school, not really being fully present in the classroom and with each other and not with the curriculum. We see that kids not want to sit in classes because they feel like it doesn't fit them. They feel like their teachers don't understand, right? So we're going to build that defective mindset into the asset mindset together, and how to really create a unified whole. And our last impact is systemic inequity, right? We miss the chance to leverage the rich assets students possess, maintaining the status quo. We we go off of what we think is needed and not what we think is right, right? We go through things differently together. So there's definitely the sabotage of those mindsets, of the defective mindsets and the defective narratives, and how can we change that brain and change it into being the asset. Okay. So some of our goals that we have here today and that I really want you to keep in your brain as we go is we want to shift that mindset. So by the end of this self-paced workshop, you will achieve 3 concrete outcomes. Okay. So the first one, like I said, is shifting your mindset. You'll be able to constantly distinguish between asset-based and defective-based language, really understanding what is there and what we need to practice and what we need to be on versus what we think needs to go. We need to base it off of what our students are needing, what their needs are, and how can we meet them in the place that we are, but still teach the curriculum in a way that they still feel accepted. And it starts with us. It starts as educators because we need to feel like we are fully understood in order to fully understand a child, right? So our second one is we're going to redesign some lessons together. We're going to modify one lesson to leverage those students' assets. You're going to explicitly leverage 3 or more students' assets. So, like I said, 90% of our district is students of color, Black, Latino, multilingual learners. I want you to think of 3 students in particular that you have. It could be in the same class. It could be 3 different students in 3 different classes. I really want you to think of how that leverage can change based on what the students need in your classroom. Think of your students, think of your classroom, think of who they are in the building that you're in, and how can we shape this together. Our last one is commit to action. So you will set an individualized, culturally responsive action goal, or ICRAG, right? That's a mouthful, ICRAG. But we're going to implement those for immediate implementation. So by the end of this workshop, you're going to be able to go in with your lesson. You're going to be able to implement it what you need. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then we go back to the drawing board and you'll have those people in your corner to help you work through it. I will be in your corner and helping you work through it. But I want you to remember those goals that we have, the shift your mindset, the redesigning our lessons, and the commit to action, because you are here because you're committed to wanting to have a better atmosphere and a better classroom for your students and a better building for your students. So we're going to go on to module 1. Module 1 is we're going to get honest with ourselves, right? This workshop isn't meant to be something that's comfortable, right? You have to be uncomfortable to get comfortable is what I love to say. And what I want people to understand, right? Talking about the uncomfortable situations is the only way to move forward, is the only way to really sit down with our feelings and really understand what we're kind of processing, right? So this module will focus on the phase requires deep, honest self-reflection, and we will explore some implicit biases and audit the use of defective language in your current practice, right? So this is going to take some time, right? We're going to have some time to do it here, but it's not just going to stop in the workshop. I don't want it to stop just here. I want it to continue on into what your future learning, and constantly seeing that and being in reflection and self-reflection with yourself. Okay. So we're gonna do a little activity here. I do have the RCSD equity data summary, and we're gonna look at that together, right? Like I passed it out to everyone. Everyone will get a copy in their email about what's going on. But we're going to review the most recent summary of achievement and opportunity gaps, right? So this is the equity data is our goal for the next 10 years in our district, where we are right now, where we want to go, and everything in between. And, that's going to change over time. It's something that our superintendent decided that, this is what we need to do and this is what we need to look at. But really take a look at where our achievement gaps are, where our opportunity gaps are, and how can we move forward together into creating this sustainable goal of creating a curriculum that every child is feeling heard, every child is feeling seen, every child is feeling loved. Of course, it doesn't want me to click it. Don't worry, I will send it out again, so everybody can see it and everybody can really reflect. So I want everybody to take a couple minutes, and I really want you to look at this data and this equity summary and really being there for one another. All right, so now that we took time looking at the equity data summary, we looked at the achievement gaps, we've looked at our goals, and we've looked at everything that our superintendent has in mind. I want us to reflect. What is one data point that challenged your assumptions about student performance in your content area? right? We have every range here. We have anywhere from a kindergarten teacher to a high school teacher to an admin to a principal, right? What is one thing, and I want you to write this down, one thing that genuinely challenge your existing assumptions about your student performance in your specific content area? One thing. I'll give you some time to think about that, and then we're going to share out, right? We're going to look at each other and we're going to do a talk and share. So take your time. I want you to figure that out and see what you're going through. All right. So we did that prompt, right? Here's our activity for this module, right? We're going to write, talk, share, whichever you want to do, right? I want you to turn and talk and respond to the following question. How have your cultural background, language, and life experiences shaped your most deeply held assumptions about teaching, learning, and what success looks like in your classroom? Right? So, how have your cultural background, language, and personal experience shaped your assumptions about teaching, learning, and what success looks like in your classroom? So I want you to focus. I want you to write. I want you to think. I want you to take the time, right? There is no limit. If you're not done with it right now, like we can revisit it at your own time. We can talk at your own time and see how that works. I'll let you do that. All right. Now that you wrote that, right? We're gonna be doing some spotting of the defective language. So the defective is they just don't have the background knowledge for this text, right? That's that. And then you got the asset, right? What diverse experiences and prior knowledge can students draw upon to make connections to this text? The defective language focuses on what is missing or what's lacking or what they can't see, right? An asset language focuses on what is present and what their strength is to really connect to the material, right? We want to use their experiences to help shape the curriculum, help shape the classroom, help shape one another, because every student has something that is useful to us, right? Students use us as their sounding board. So how can we move forward and how can we take away the what's missing and what's lacking and focus it on being what's present and what the strength is within it, okay? So we're going to do another activity. I know this workshop's full of activities. You're going to love them. It's meant to really challenge your brain on what you're thinking and what's working and what's doing, all right? So I want you to write down 2 instances where you used or heard defective language, and how could you rephrase it into using asset-based language? Okay? So I want you to review your instructional feedback to students or the language used in a recent team or department meeting, whether that's professional learning, professional development, whether that's just sitting with coworkers. And I want you to write down those instances where you used or heard that language and then actively rephrase it into each instance using a clear asset-based language. All right, so I want to take a pause here and I want to check in. I want to do a self-assessment. And this isn't something to make you sit there and think, right? This is something that is a yes, no, or I need more time on this subject and on to really kind of understand. And if you don't understand the defective and the asset, like, do we need to sit more time and we really need to talk about it, right? So before moving on to phase 2, I want to check for your understanding. I want to take a moment and really ask, do you now know clearly how to understand the difference between an asset-based and a defective-based thinking in your classroom scenario, right? You can tell me yes, you can tell me no, you can tell me you need more time, right? Like, that's up to you. And if we do need to go back, We can go back to slides 9 and 10, right? We can go back to slides with the spotting the languages and then the instructional language audit. We can go back and we can talk about that. All right. So we're gonna keep trucking along here. We're gonna keep moving and we're gonna do this together. We're gonna get through it, right? So module 2 is gonna focus on from tolerance to sustaining culture. So this module establishes the critical theory framework of culturally sustaining pedagogy, or CSP, and we move beyond simple response to actively sustaining, to actively working together, to actively trying and figuring this out together. Okay. So the shift from CRP to CSP, right? So CRP is the culturally responsive pedagogy, and it's an important first step using cultural references to make learning relevant, right? We're going to bridge that gap and bridge that understanding into that culturally responsive pedagogy, right? And then we're going to move over to the culturally sustaining pedagogy, which goes a little bit further, right? CSP actively supports and maintains the cultural linguistics competence of students while offering access to dominant culture, skills, and knowledge. It's about maintenance, not just relevance. So I want you to remember that, right? CRP is just about maintenance. Just about, I'm sorry, CRP is just about relevance, whereas CSP is about maintenance and relevance. It's about building those together and helping those fit one on one together. Okay. Ooh. All right. All right. So now I want us to watch a video on culturally responsive education and action. Okay. All right, so now that we watched the video and we looked at it, what is one specific example from the video of a teacher sustaining a student's culture or language rather than just responding to it? Right? I want us to share out. You can write it down in your journal. You can muster in it. You can sit down and you can think about it, right? But one thing that really stood out to me is driving the students to do their poems, right? Finding a poem that matches them because it really helped them in their learning of that poem and in their learning of that curriculum to find something that really suits them, find something that they find themselves really relating to. And the young man at the end said it perfectly, right? Like, if students can see themselves in the curriculum, teachers can also start seeing themselves in the curriculum. So it's not just about the kids, it's also looking at us as well. Okay. So there are 5 tenets to CSP. Okay. The 5 tenets are the backbone of CSP and will guide your practical work in Module 3. Right. So the first one is center. So center students' cultural knowledge. Okay. Think about that. Center the students' cultural knowledge into the curriculum. Validate and extend linguistic diversity. Knowing that things are different and students go through that, it's validating and extending it and making it further. Okay? Promote cultural perspectives. Encourage kids to talk about it. Encourage the uncomfortable conversations. Encourage students to embrace it. Okay? Disrupt oppressive systems. Curriculum fits this one mold, right? We can change that and disrupt it into being something that works and fits. Engage in community expertise. Bring in community members. Bring in that outside world of our students and fit it into your curriculum, into your classroom, into your conversations, into your knowledge. Bring that community into our building and fit it that way. Okay. So we're going to talk about the why. Okay. The power of asset-based design. So when we initially design instruction that integrates students' assets, we improve relevance, increase rigor, and foster a deeper sense of belonging. This is the pathway to closing that achievement gap or that opportunity gap. Okay. This intentional focus of access is the clearest pathway to genuinely closing the opportunity gap in our CSD and helping kids build their own learning and building their own curriculum. Okay. All right, so we went through Module 1, right? Module 1 is analyzing and reflecting and getting honest with yourself. Okay. Module 2, was the framework and the theory from tolerance to sustaining culture. All right, now we're going to move on to Module 4, the practical redesign studio, as I like to call it, right? The action phase. This is the most crucial phase, applying the CSP tenets to your own unit materials, right? Like we've talked about the time where you wish it was different. You wish you've heard the defective and now you can change it to the asset. You can see where the asset needs to go. But now it's going to be your time to applying these materials and these tenets to your own materials, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to choose one upcoming lesson or unit, and I want you to walk away from this module with one modified lesson showing the points where your student assets are leveraged, okay? I want to see 3 or more specific points where your students' assets are being leveraged and how your students can really take away these CSP practices into their everyday life. These 5 tenets into their everyday life. Okay. So here's your step 1. We're going to be reworking essential questions, right? The defective to the asset. So rephrase your unit's essential question so that it requires students to connect their cultural knowledge or experience to answer it, right? So here's my example. Instead of what caused the Great Depression, I want you to try this and think about this. How do economic shifts in our community today compare to the historical economic crisis, and whose perspectives are missing from the dominant narrative? Right? It's getting kids to think about today and what they're going through today and how to relate it to something that happened 100 years ago. Okay, things are different then. Things are different now. How can we change it from the defective to the asset that requires students to connect their cultural knowledge and experiences to answer it? Here's your step 2, the windows and mirrors for materials, right? Resources should be mirrors, reflecting students' own identities and cultures. And then they're windows, allowing students to view and experience the experiences of others. So I want you to audit the materials in your chosen lesson. And what resources can you add or substitute to create the mirrors for your specific RCSD students? Okay. That could be articles, videos, text, images, writing samples, right? I want you to audit those materials that you specifically chosen in those lessons, and how can we modify them to create the mirrors, reflecting the students' own identities and cultures. All right, so we're going to go to step 3 now, the asset-based assessment. The assessment must honor and use students' linguistics and cultural repertoires, okay? I want you to revise one assessment, task, or rubric to explicitly value multiple ways of demonstrating knowledge, allowing oral presentations, multimedia creations, or the inclusive of home language or resources connections, okay? The task should show what they can do, not just what they should have learned through one specific medium, okay? So by now, right, you should have one modified lesson, one lesson that fits the CSP tenets and what your students are learning, right? We're going to take a little minute right now, and we're going to really sit down and we're going to reflect and we're going to look at it. And then when we come back, we're going to transition into focusing your design to commitment. All right, so now we're going to move into module 4, right? The commitment and share. The commitment and peer support, right? That I like to say module 4 is. So we're going to formalize your action plan and build a support network for immediate implementation. This is about accountability and collective growth, right? Like we could create this together, but now I want you to implement it. And I want others to hold us accountable to implementing this measure. Okay. So you fit your lesson plan into what we're doing, right? We all have a shared RCSD drive. I want you to upload your redesigned lesson plan to our RCSD shared drive. Okay. And for this activity, I want you to review the redesigned lessons of at least 2 of your colleagues, right? It can be a colleague within your own unit. It can be a colleague in a completely different entire universe, like our elementary can look at high school and vice versa and things like that, okay? And then I want you to reflect. What is one idea that you saw from a colleague that you will borrow and adapt for your own classroom? What is one specific idea, resource, or reframe essential question you saw from a colleague that you will borrow and adapt for your own classroom? Okay. All right. So the individual culturally responsive action goal, the ACRAG, right? So the ACRAG is kind of like a SMART goal for CSP implementation. You will use in your classroom over the next couple weeks, over the next month, right? So I want you to write your ICRAG on the top of your lesson plan in the shared document. An example of it could be like, I will rewrite the 5 essential questions in my upcoming unit to explicitly require students to leverage their home/community knowledge. Okay. And I want you to use that. Okay. Here's another one, right? By the end of next week, I will modify the reading list for Unit 3 by substaining one required historical text with a contemporary text written by an RCSD student's culture of origin, and I will create 3 culturally relevant discussion questions for it. Okay. I will update the intake forms for all new students next month to include a required question. What are 2 to 3 unique cultural or community strengths the student brings that we can leverage to our own learning plan? Okay. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about your goal, how you're going to implement it over the next couple weeks. And when we come back in a month, how has that goal stayed or has it changed over time? Okay. So now we're going to go into creating your peer coaching triad, right? I want you to choose 2 to 3 colleagues who have also completed the workshop, right? Who have also sat here and looked at CRP versus CSP and how the defective and the asset have changed over time and how we want to change the mindset, right? I want you to choose 2 to 3 colleagues and I want you to set aside a check-in to discuss your CRAG process and the progress that you've made over time. Okay? I want you to set a time that you all can write down what's happening, write down what's working, what's not working, what we can do together to help each other move forward. Okay? This is your essential accountability team. This is your accountability team, right? They are the people who are going to hold you accountable. I can hold you accountable all I want, but if the peers and the colleagues that you have hold you accountable, because we all want to get this work done, right? We all need to be a collective unit in building this environment and building this for our students. Okay. All right. So it was a lot, right? We talked about a lot. We talked about the asset, the defective. We talked about all the modules moving forward. We created lesson plans that fit our students, right? So I want to thank you for your commitment to building the asset-based classrooms. I want to thank you for taking this time and really listening and diving deep into what your students need, because you're here because you know that your students need this, right? You know your students need to be implemented in the classroom and to feel heard and seen and safe in your classroom. You all know that. That's why you're all here, right? So I want you to implement your ICRAG immediately, right away, okay? I want you to start thinking about that tomorrow, right? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever, right? I want you to start doing it now. I want you to think of those colleagues. I want you to look at all those lesson plans that are already in our folder, and I want you to go in it and see what you can use to help your students in your classroom. Because maybe somebody else has an idea that you never thought of, right? I want you to really think about that, okay? As always, if you have any more questions, you can always reach out to me through email, through phone, and I'll be more than willing to come and speak. Thank you, and I hope you have a